Tonight, it is my pleasure to introduce to you one of the top experts, academic experts on Syria and the broader region, Levant and Mesopotamia, Dr. Fabrice Balanche. Professor Balanche is professor at the University of Lyon, and he is, for the next 2 years, visiting fellow at the Washington Institute on the Midlde East. So he's not only a specialist who travels to the region and is intimately familiar with the subject upon which he will speak, but he's also in the middle of the policy-making establishment in Washington, D.C. The title of his talk is, Can Religious Pluralism Survive Sectarian War? Syria, Iraq, Lebanon. So I would now invite Dr. Balanche to come to the microphone and try to answer that question. Dr. Balanche.
Thank you for coming, listening to the conference. So can the religious pluralism survive? This question is returned in force today because we are 5 years after the Arab uprising, and we have seen that the Arab uprising was not the democratic and secular revolution that we thought and that a lot of media think it was. By the contrary, we have seen that this Arab uprising was in fact a green uprising, this is an Islamic uprising. And the Christian communities are concerned about the process to make the Sharia, what does it mean, the Islamic law, the main source of legislation in a lot of countries. They tried in Tunisia, they succeed in Egypt, and in Syria, the minority and the Christian fear about an Iraqi scenario that will require them to leave the country or to take refuge in protected zone like Iraqi Kurdistan, or it could be also the Alawite country. When you see these maps of the Middle East at the end of the Ottoman Empire, we see that there was a lot of minorities living in Turkey. Turkey was about 1/3 of the population was Christian. In Syria, in Lebanon too. And now, if we have the same maps, we will see that many Christian minorities disappear from the former Ottoman Empire area, because the 20th century was a nation-building process, and the nationalisms destroyed the minorities in many Muslim countries because the identity was not a secular national identity, but in fact actually a Muslim identity. And what we see with the Arab uprising is the same things. You have also another problem. It's with the ethnic minorities like the Kurds. The Kurds who are living in Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Iran are also discriminated by the state building in the area. We see, for instance, that in Turkey today there is a huge repression against the Kurdish population. In Syria, the Kurds try to make not a state but autonomous region. But I'm not going to speak about the Kurds today because the subject is so important that I'm going to concentrate on just the religious minorities. We have also to take in consideration that this area, Middle East, is at the center of what we call the arc of crisis. The arc of crisis is coming from the Cold War. It's the opposition between United States and the former Soviet Union, that is coming back today. And we are, moreover, in a great opposition between Iran and Saudi Arabia and Turkey. In Middle East, we have three powers: Iran, Turkey, Saudi Arabia. They are fighting for the domination of the area. We have also two outsiders, Qatar and Israel, but I think now these Qatar and Israel are minor actors. The three more important are Iran, in front of what we call the Sunni axis, Saudi Arabia and Turkey. And as you can see on this map, Russia is back. Russia in 2008 came in Georgia and closed the Georgian Sea. Russia is back also in Central Asia, and now, since September 2015, Russia came directly in Syria, and now Turkey is surrounded by Russia. So we are in this very difficult regional geopolitical problem, and also in an international problem, because Syria, Iraq become the center of the opposition between United States and Russia, as if United States are not so involved now in Middle East than before. And I don't think that the Obama administration are going to send ground troops in the area, because Obama was elected to get back the GIs from Iraq, not for send them in Syria. That explains why United States are so shy in Syria since 2011. So the main conflict now in Syria, in Iraq, in Lebanon is not between Russia and United States. It's between Iran, which is the Shia power in the area, and Turkey, Saudi Arabia, which are the Sunni power in the area. And the different communities are prisoners of this opposition. The main problem, you can see on this map in the Muslim world, the Sunni are dominating, are the main most important part of the Sunni of the Muslim world. About 90% of the Muslims are Sunni, and 10% are Shia, concentrated in Iran, in Iraq, and you have small Shia pockets in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Syria. Shia are not unified like the Sunni, because you have different branch. You have what we call the Orthodox Shia, the 12er, like in Iraq, like in Iran, and you have also Alawite, Druze, Ismailian, Zaydite, many small community who are not so Muslim, because, for instance, the Alawite, which are the minority of Syria, which are the community of Bashar al-Assad, they believe in the reincarnation, and so it's not very Muslim. So some community are very far from the Orthodox Islam, like the Alawite or the Druze. And in the Sunni mentality, they are the community of the power. The Caliph, Al-Khalifa in Arabic, it's the follower of Muhammad. And the Caliph must be Sunni. The chief has not, there is no Caliph, no, there is al-Baghdadi, but since 1924, since Turkey became a republic, there is no officially a caliph, because the Sultan of Istanbul was the caliph and was also the chief of the Muslim. But the Sunni think that the president of the republic must be Muslim, but must be Sunni Muslim, because what we call the function of authorities, in Arabic the wilayat al-amma, must belong to the Sunni, and they don't recognize any possibility for the Christian, for the Alawite, for the Druze to be president or to get an authority. As if the Sunni are in some countries like Iraq a minority, they think that they are the majority of the Muslim world, they are the real Muslim, and the other are heretics. And as if the Jewish or the Christian are recognized like people belonging to the Holy Book, they are not full citizen. They are not considered like the Muslim. They are what we call zimmi. Zimmi, they are protected by Islam, but they are not. They don't have the same right than the Muslim. This is the distribution of the population in Syria, Lebanon, Israel, and Jordan at the end of the Ottoman Empire. In green, you can see it's the Arab Sunni. In dark green, the Shia. In blue, the Christian. In yellow, the Alawite. And in orange, the Druze. This distribution of the population distribution of the population is logical according to the place of each community with the power. The Sunni Muslims are the dominant community. The Caliph in Istanbul is Sunni. The governor of Syria is Sunni. And the Sunni are living in the cities, are living in the plain, in the fertile plain, like between Homs and Hama, close to Aleppo. And the minorities, the Maronites, the Druze, Shia, the Alawite, are in the mountain, because the mountains are not very rich area. And it's not interesting for the power to control the mountain. So they let the minority in the mountain. They let also the minorities between the cities and the Bedou, because it's a very, very dangerous area. The Bedou are still fighting, try to what we call it, to razu the area, to send troops in this area. So it's a very dangerous area. And the Ottoman authority let the minority to settle in this area to protect the main city. And this distribution of the population is still the distribution that we have in Syria and in Lebanon today. Of course, with the rural migration from the countryside to the city, in the city you have Alawite, you have Maronite, you have Druze, but the original distribution of the population was the minority in the periphery and the majority Sunni in the center. The center, what does it mean? The city, because the city was the city where the place of the power, and it was prohibited for the minority like the Alawite to live in the city. The Alawite in Syria started to live in the city with the French mandate. Before, it was prohibited for them. and they started to as the Sunnis say, to invade the city in the 60s after the Ba'athist revolution, because most of the Ba'athists was Alawite, and when they take the power, also they bring their family, they bring their supporters to the city to control the city. Because the original habitat of the Alawite mountain, was not so wealthy area, small villages without water, just wheat and tobacco. It was a very, very poor area. You can see the houses. It was not like in Lebanese mountain. When you have beautiful houses with roof. It's just small houses with stone. And you can understand why the Alawite during this the Syrian civil war are supporting the regime, because as many Alawites say me, we don't want to come back to the mountain, because they think that if the Sunni take the power, they will oblige to come back to the mountain, and the mountain for them it's significant poverty and discrimination. In Iraq, the Shia community was in the south of the country, was working for Sunni landowner at the south of Baghdad, from Baghdad to Basra, and the Arab Sunni community was in Baghdad, was in Tikrit, was in Mosul, and at the north you had the Kurds. The traditional city in the in the Middle East was a divided city. You have a map of Damascus at the beginning of the 20th century. You can see that you have three areas: the Muslim area, the Christian area, and the Jewish area. The people live. When we say Damascus by the past was a mixed city, yes, you have Muslim, you have Christian, you have Jewish, but they don't live together. Everybody has his own neighborhood, and there is no there is just one place, a mixed place. It's the souk, the bazaar, the souk, the market. You have Muslim trader, Christian trader, but and the Muslims, the Christian go to the souk, okay, but for the they don't live in the same area. They are living in different area. There is a economic life and there is a private life. And now in Syria or in Lebanon, it's nearly the same situation. Okay, you have a mixed area. Most of the time, it's wealthy area. More rich you are, more mixity you have. But more poor you are, more sectarian you are. Now it's very, very clear. And there is a sign very important. It's when you see the middle class. When you have mixed weeding inside the middle class, you can. It's a sign that we have religious pluralisms. But when you start to see a destruction of the middle class, and that the middle class become more and more sectarian, it's a very bad signal for the society. And when I was in Syria last 20 years, I saw the middle class in the 90s disappear and become more and more sectarian. And I thought at this time it was a bad signal for Syria. Today the Christian minority in Midlde East are very small. In Iraq, you have less than 300,000 Christians. But does it mean less than 1% of the population concentrated in north of Iraq? In Syria, it was 20% in 1945. In 2010, it was 5% of the population. And today it's about 3% because 40% of the Christian left Syria. There is about 6 million of refugees outside Syria. 80% of the refugees are Sunni, of course, because the Sunni community it's about 2/3 of the Syrian population. But the Christians are 9% of the refugees. What does it mean? It's the most, according to the weight of the Christian community, it's most important immigration. Because the Christian community in Syria is don't have a special territory like the Alawite, like the Druze, so they are very weak, and it's difficult for them to live as a minority without weapon, without militia like the other to protect them. When you have Christians that they can survive in Syria, unfortunately, it's because they have a militia, like in Hasakeh, in the northeast, or like close to Homs, where you have the Syrian Socialist National Party who organize the Christian community. Why is the weight of the Christian decrease from 20% in 1945 to 5% to 2010 in Syria? It's not because of discrimination, because in fact the Christian in Syria have never been discriminated during the Republic or during the Baas regime. It's because two things. First, the natural demographic trend. The Christians in Syria benefit from very good education thanks to the mission, Protestant, Catholic, or Russian for the Orthodox. So they are well educated. If you are well educated, you have less children. If you are well educated, if you know French, if you know English, you can migrate more easy than the other. And the both things reduced quickly the number of the Christian. Not the number, because the number is the same, but the percentage of the Christian in the Syrian society. On this figure, you have what we call the demographic transition. The natality stay very high, the mortality decrease very fast, and during a short period, you have during the time when the natality is high and the mortality is down, you have this transition where of the population increase very fast. And for the Christian community, it was the 19th century. It's during the 19th century that the Christian did their demographic transition. And in the 20th century, it was finished. They have been outside the demographic transition because the fertility rate of the Christian community was very, very low. By the contrary, the Muslim society did its demographic transition during the 20th century. And that's why you have this difference between the fertility rate of the Muslim and the fertility rate of the Christian in many countries in the Middle East. But the Christian, if the Christians succeed to have a quick transition, also the minorities, Shia minority like the Alawite, did transition very, very quickly. On this map, So here you have the population of Jordan. Jordan is a Muslim country, about 97%. Syria and Lebanon. You can see the difference between Lebanon, where the Christians are about 1/3 of the population, and where the average level of education is higher than in Jordan and in Syria, and so the birth reduced very, very quickly, and Jordan and Syria. And in the area populated by Alawites, like the coast, and the Jebel Druze, the other minority, we see that the fertility rate is very low in comparison of this Sunni crescent or the area of Daraa, where it's Sunni too. Here, the population, the fertility rate is about 8 children per woman. In Idlib, in Raqqa, it's still 8 children per woman. And in the Alawite area, it's only 2 or 3 children per woman, like in the Druze area. If we add the fertility rate of the Christian population in Syria, we could see that it's under 2 children per woman. So the minority, who were 20% of the Syrian population in 1981, now are, in 2010, were only 20% of the population, because of this difference between the fertility rate in the Sunni area and the minorities area. It's the same thing in Lebanon. You can see on this graph, this is a Shia community in 1971, and now in 2005. So it was very high and it decreased very fast, like the Sunni. But when you see the Druze, the Maronite, and the other Christian, in 1971 it was 3.5. Instead, for the Shia it was 7, and for the Sunni it was 5. So now it's 2.2, 2.5 for the Shia, but for the Druze, the Maronite, and other Christian, it's under 2 children per woman. So why is the weight of the Christian decrease in Syria, in Lebanon? It's because of the overdevelopment, in fact, of the Christian community, who benefit from the well education thanks to the foreign school, but the consequence, it's the population decrease very fast. And moreover, you have the immigration of the Christian community. The minorities in Midlde East have been manipulated by French and British imperialism after the Ottoman Empire. When France and Great Britain came in Midlde East, when they drew the Sykes-Picot agreement, France take Syria and Lebanon, Great Britain take Jordan, Israel, and Palestine, and they divided the area in small states. France, moreover, France created an Alawite state on the coast, where the Alawite was 2/3 of the population. They created a Druze state for the Druze. It was only 50,000 people. The Alawite state was 300,000 people. Lebanon at this time was less than 1 million of people. It was a state for the Christian. There was the majority of the population. They divided Syria between Damascus and Aleppo, 2 states. but in 2024 there was a unification between Aleppo and Damascus because it was not sustainable. And at this time, it was the beginning of the Arab nationalism. But France wanted to create a sectarian state because France thought that if she creates state for the minorities, the minority should be obliged to support France because they were grateful for France to create a state to protect them, but they will never join the agreed Syria because the minority will be afraid by the Sunni domination of the new state. But at this time started the Arab national ideology, and the minorities thought that the Arab nationalism could be an alternative to the Sunni domination, and agreed to belong to this new Syria, new state of Syria. And in Lebanon, it was the national pact, national agreement between the Sunni, the Christian, and the Shia, who was the beginning of the Lebanese state. But this Arab nationalisms, this agreement didn't work very well. He was working against the colonialism, the French colonialism, but when the Syria and Lebanon were independent, the fight against the colonialism disappeared, and the fight inside the country for the power started. They had two ways. One way, it was the Baasism. The minorities created a party with a secular ideology, and on the other side, you had the Arab nationalism versus Nasser, versus Egypt, much marked by his Arab Islamic characters. Because in Egypt, the Christian was only 10% of the population, so the Arab nationalism was dominated by the Sunni population, and as if it was secular, the Christian was marginalized by Nasser. And it's interesting to see that in Syria and Lebanon, most of the Sunni population, instead to belong to the Baas party, where you had the Christians, the Jews, the Alawites, belonged to Nasserist party because they thought they were better in the Nasserist party, who is the representation of the Sunni of the Sunni population. We have to understand that in Midlde East, ideology are in fact smoke screen. Why the minorities belong to the Baas party? Because they want a protection against the Sunni domination. Why the Sunni belong to the Nasserist party? Because the Nasserist party is the Sunni-dominated party. You can take all the party in political party in Midlde East, and you will see, as if it's a communist party, there is a sectarian identity. All the communist party in Lebanon and Syria were created by the Orthodox community, the Christian Orthodox community. Why? Because it's the special relation with Moscow. Before the Bolshevik Revolution, the Greek Orthodox were protected by Russia, by the Tsar. After 1917, there is a communist revolution in Russia. Never mind, the Orthodox are still following Moscow. And today, the Orthodox are still following Moscow because Moscow is protecting the Orthodox. Russia, the communist Russia, was used the Orthodox community everywhere in the Middle East as if as partner, as how we say, as allies in Middle East. In Syria, also the Kurds started to enter in the Communist Party, and I remember at the beginning of the 90s, the Communist Party in Syria exploded. There was a division between two branches of the two branch. Officially, one branch was still very pro-Sovietic, as if Soviet Union didn't exist anymore, and another branch was more, how we say, Euro-communist, like Berlinguer, but actually the division was between Bagdash and the Kurds, and between Faisal and the Christian. But does it mean that the Communist Party in Syria at the beginning of the 90s exploded on sectarian line, and the ideological pretext was a pretext, was a smoke screen. So it's very, very interesting to have always a sectarian view on the political movement in the area. And because the sectarianism, it's the backbone of the society. It's the basis of the society. So, coming to a little bit to the Syrian civil war. When started the Syrian uprising, everybody thought it was a revolution. All the people was fighting against the Assad, against the dictator, and very few people say that, be careful, it's a sectarian war. It was not only a sectarian war, it was also a socio-economic uprising, but when you know the ground, you see that it was the revolution was supported only by the poor Arab Sunni population. Christian, Alawite, Druze was away from the uprising. The Kurds was protesting too, but they was not with the Arab Sunni. The Kurds stay away from the Arab opposition because they have their own agenda, which is a Kurdish state. And you still know there is no unity between the Kurds and the Arab opposition, because the Arab opposition is very Arab nationalist, and they don't want to give any independence, any autonomy to the Kurds. That was in Geneva last time. The Kurds came separate from the Syrian National Coalition from the Arab opposition. if we take the example of Latakia, Latakia, it's the city on the Syrian coast. Latakia is what we call the capital of the Alawite area. On the coast, the population, majority of the population is Alawite. Latakia is here. Half of the city is Alawite, half of the city is Sunni. There is also a Christian minority, about 10%. In yellow, it's the Alawite. In green, it's the Sunni. And in red, it's the Christian. This is Wadi Nasara. Here you have Kesab, Armenian villages at the north. When the uprising started in Syria, you have some protestation in the Syrian coast. At the same time that you have the uprising in Deraa, in the south, you had also an uprising in Banyas, and in the countryside of Banyas. But why? Because you have Sunni villages in Banyas. You see better on this map, perhaps. In Baida, a Sunni village. And it was just in this village that you had an uprising. And after, you had an uprising in Banyas city, but just in the Sunni area of Banyas, in the Alawite area, there was no protestation. At this time, I remember all the newspaper, the journalists focus on Deraa, and they forget to speak about Banyas, because in Banyas it was clearly a sectarian uprising. The revendication of the population was very anti-Alawite, and it was not in the thinking of the Western supporter of the Syrian opposition. That's why they deny, they didn't want to be interested by what's happened in Banyas. I remember in springtime 2011, I was in Syria, and I saw the protestation in Latakia. So Latakia is a city divided between the Alawite area here and Sunni area in green. You have a Christian area here, and few mixed area like Mashrestani, like the Cornish, what we call Cornish Janubi, the South Cornish. It's wealthy area close to the sea, and the uprising was very violent here in this area. Ramel Falestini and Ramel Janubi, which are both very poor Sunni neighborhood of the city. And the protestator came from this neighborhood and tried to invade the center of the city. And when they enter in the center of the city, the Sunni middle class, who were protested too, when they saw the poor Sunni coming from the south, they came back home. They didn't want to protest with the poor. So it was a clear sectarian uprising and also a social uprising. The businessman, the Sunni businessman from Latakia, I was spoken with them, they said me that they don't want to support the uprising. By the contrary, we'd like to support the Assad because he liberates the economy, and the business world was very happy with the new economic policy in Syria, and they were afraid that the uprising destroyed the country, and what's happened. Why the Alawite not join the uprising? First, the fear of the Sunni domination. Second, because 90% of the Alawite are working for the state. They are in the army, they are in the intelligence service, they are also civil servants, they are working in public industry. And in 20 years, the Alawites who were poor peasants, illiterate, living in, have you seen, very, very poor condition, thanks to the regime, benefit from a very huge social promotion. Okay, they are not very wealthy, they belong to the middle class, but it was for them a very huge promotion according to the poor and bad condition of living that they had in the 50s and the 60s. And that's why they are loyal to the government, and they don't want to come back to the poor condition in the mountain. And as they are very involved in the army, in the secret service, the Syrian army didn't explode, like, for instance, the Libyan army. Very, very quick. At the beginning of the Libyan uprising, we have seen the Libyan army divided in 2, 3, 4 parts, but the Syrian army stay unified. You had a lot of deserters, of course, but the backbone of the army, the officer, very few officers left the army. In many newspapers, we say that there was 50 generals who left the Syrian army in 2011-2012. I said, there is 50 generals who left the army. But do you know how many generals there is in the Syrian army? 1,200. So, and the people who left, they were close to 60, so they had to leave the army. And it was only Arab Sunni general, and in not very strategic place, and they expected to have a better promotion, better position with the uprising, and also because the Qatar and Saudi Arabia give them a lot of money to join the Free Syrian Army. You have some intellectual, also Alawite intellectual, that they decided to join the Syrian revolution, but very, very few people, and they are in France, in Europe. No, they didn't stay in Syria, and they have no social basis in the country. Because the Alawites know that the victory of the majority, that does it mean the Arab Sunni, would mean for them the dictatorship of the majority, re-Islamization of the society and the Syrian institution, in which they will not have their place, and that's why many Alawites are supporting Bashar al-Assad. It's not because they love Bashar al-Assad, it's because they don't have any choice. As the Christian, as the Druze, they have no choice. The only choice they have is to left the country. The Christians are in this situation. They leave the country because, as I said, they don't have stronghold, a territory when they can stay. They leave the country because it was a urban war. If we take the example of Homs, this is the city of Homs. In yellow, the Alawite area of Zahra. In blue, the Christian area in the center, in Bab Tadmor. This is the mixed area at the west of the city, the most more wealthy area. All the center of Homs, if you remember, was destroyed by the fighting and by the rebel who invaded the center. And they expelled the Christian community from the center. So you have some people that they left the country directly. They had family, relatives in Lebanon, and they chose to go to Lebanon, and from Lebanon to ask a visa for Canada, France, or other countries. And the other take refuge in Wadi Nasara, where they had some flats, because it's a summer mountain. when you spent your holiday in summer. And they decided to take refuge in this area. Some of them have been to Saadat or Qaryatayn, but when the Islamic State attacked these both villages last year, they had to move again. You see that the problem of the Syrian of the Christian in Syria, that they are a small community dispersed everywhere. So it's more difficult to protect you. To protect you when you are a small village in the Sunni Sea, like in Horan, for instance, where they can stay. It's where when they are with another minority, like in the Jebel Druze or like in the Alawite area. But in all these areas, it's difficult. And when we take the example of Aleppo too, the fighting was also in the center of the city. But does it mean where you have the Armenian community, about half of the Christian community of Aleppo, and most of the Armenian from Aleppo left for Armenia. I was in Yerevan last year, and I've seen many people from Aleppo that they open shops, restaurants in Armenia, and they don't think to come back to Syria. If in Armenia the life is not very nice because there is economic problem, so they are in Armenia waiting visa for Canada or for United States. But I don't think that they will come back to Syria. Many people tell me that we will never come back to Aleppo because they're afraid of the future. They are not sure that if tomorrow the peace come back, in 10 years, in 20 years, they will not have a new uprising. And the demographic trend are very clear. I don't think that the Christian fertility of the fertility of the minority will increase very fast to rebalance the demography in Syria. So in area like the north of Syria, I think that most of the minority will disappear. This is the area close to the Crac des Chevaliers, where you have the Wadi Nasara. In this area, the Christian can survive because it's the Alawite, Alawite mountain. This is the Saint George Couvent, if you know. The Marmarita and other Christian villages close to the Crac. This is the church of Tartus. It's a church from the Middle Age, and you can see. No, there is when the Crusader left Tartus in the 13th century, this church was transforming in mosque, of course. But no, it's a museum, so it's not anymore a mosque of a church. But you can see that it's a fortress, it's a castle. The Crusader built this cathedral, this church, like a fortress to be as protection, and I think it's a good. Conclusion for the good picture to illustrate the situation of the Christian in Midlde East. The community are like a fortress, like to think they're thinking themselves like a fortress, surrounded by hostile Muslim world. I spoke a lot, and so I'm going to conclude. Religious pluralisms can hardly survive in the region, in the area. Christians are the first victim, but we saw how they were treated. Yazidi in Iraq, Druze minority, Alawite, and in Syria too, but also secular Sunni are victims of the jihadism. I met in Damascus a lawyer from the Raqqa, for instance. They were obliged to leave Raqqa because, as they were lawyers under the secular law, under the law of the Republic of Syria, they are considered like enemy by the Islamic State because there is only one law. It's the law of God. They don't recognize the law of the state, and so the religious diversity is threatened in Midlde East by jihadist movement, by integrism, but also the secular Sunni. We don't have to forget that the secular Sunni are victims of the other radical. In Syria and Iraq, the religious pluralisms can be maintained for the time under authoritarian states, because the authoritarian state protect the minorities. Moreover, when is coming from a minority too, in Syria, the Alawite, Bashar al-Assad is Alawite, so is protecting all the minority, not just only his minority. But when the state is ruled by the majority, okay, it's probably democracy, but the democracy, it's the dictatorship of the majority, and the minority are excluded or are destroyed. In Iraq, now we have the example of the Shia population, which dominate the state. The state building in Iraq is actually a Shia state building, and the Arab Sunni have no place in this new state. The prime minister is all the time a Shia, and he give the power and he give jobs, of course, to Shia community, and the Arab Sunni are marginalized by the new power. The Kurds understand this situation since a long time because they prefer to build their state, and now the Kurdistan is quite independent from Baghdad. There is the link is very weak between Kurdistan and Baghdad. The Kurds don't take the independence because they are not supported nor by United States nor by Iran for take the independence. But they don't need officially to take the independence. They are independent. The problem of the Middle East, it's that we are in a new 30-year war, like we were in Europe in the 17th century. If you remember the 30-year war in Central Europe in the 17th century, it started in Prague, between Calvinist, Catholic, and Lutheran, and the problem was growing in all Central Europe. France was supporting France Catholic country was supporting the Protestant prince in Germany because she wanted to fight against the Habsburg. Sweden intervened. So this internal problem, this religious sectarian internal problem in Central Europe, become an international problem because of the European geopolitics of the 17th century. And in Middle East, it's the same problem today. You have internal roots for an uprising, socio-economic problem, but also sectarian problem. And this internal problem are manipulated by the regional power that they want to expand their influence on the area. Moreover, because the United States now are a little bit weak and don't want to be involved in the area. And this conflict could destroy many states in Middle East. Today, what's the future of Iraq, of Syria? It's difficult to imagine that these both countries could stay unified. There is an American researcher, Ralph Peters, who draw a new map of the Middle East. I don't think that we will have this map, but it gives us indication of what could be happen in the Middle East after 20, 30 years of war, destruction of the state, and new state coming from ethnic and religious territories. Iraq, no. We have 3 territories, the Shia territory, the Arab Sunni territory, and the Kurd territory. Tomorrow, Syria, at minimum, we will have a Kurdish territory at the north. A Kurdish territory at the north. And if Assad regime fall, I don't think, but it's probably it's a hypothesis. We could have also an Alawite state on the coast, a Druze state on the south, like during the French mandate. Because at the same time that we have this kind of violence, we have a strong ethnic cleansing. There is no more Christian living in Daesh, in Islamic State area, in Al-Nusra area. No more Shia community too. You have a small Druze community close to Idlib. They were obliged to convert to Sunnism if they want to survive. As in the Kurdish area, you have also ethnic cleansing against the Arab. Paradoxally, for many analysts, the more mixed area is the governmental area, where you have all the minority are concentrated, and also where you have Sunni population, as Sunni refugees that they come to live in Damascus, in Homs, as in Latakia, because there is security. But these people, of course, are what we call secular Sunnism, or as if they are religious people. They believe to religious diversity, and not to integrism. So the model of coexistence between religion are challenged by the rise of the fundamentalist movement. Appeasement. Many people say, but if we let the Syrian deal together, we could have a peace agreement. Yes, but we cannot. It's not realistic. Syria, it's not an Iceland. Syria, you have neighbor, you have Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and these countries will never let the Syrian deal together. The war in Syria, it's also the proxy war between these three power. So, unfortunately, minorities, and particularly the Christian in the Middle East, are victims and will be victims for decades of conflict. And the process is more to immigration of the minorities, or for the minority who can have a territory, a large territory, the building of a state. But I'm very pessimistic about the religious diversity in this area. Thank you.